on, boy. You one, you get the other. Good morning, I'm Seth.
I'm Sandy.
Thanks for stopping by Moose Run Farm, where we are raising Cain.
Sure are.
Well, meet Cain.
Say hi, bud.
He's very sweet. He's a good little calf. He's coming to us from my friend's dairy, and he's an Angus Holstein cross, like Clover, and he was kind of a one-off calf. They didn't have any other calves that they were feeding at the time, so we got him pretty early. He was a day old when he came to us, which is a bit earlier than we normally get him. We normally get him around day 3 or 4. Sent him home with a bucket of colostrum, and it took us a little bit to get him a drink out of a bottle, right?
No,
First,
just one good feeding.
yeah, first night we kind of struggled to get him drinking, but then after that he was good, and he's been doing great ever since.
It was game on.
Yeah, he's very sweet.
I just noticed a little white spot on his back hoof.
On his foot, yeah. It's the only white on him that I've seen.
On his belly. He has white on his belly.
But he's been doing good, and Clover has enjoyed having, I think he's enjoyed having a companion.
I think so too.
They don't seem to be no conflict that I've seen, so it's good.
Good boys.
Cain had an interesting first couple days with us. It was very cold and rainy when he was born. Ready for number 2?
Mm-hmm. Go, bud. You got it.
And we gave him a ride home in my truck. Because it was so cold and rainy out. And then he spent the first couple nights in the garage, the basement under the house. Anything you want to say, Cain? Which worked out fine, but he started to...
Till 5 a.m.
Yeah, he would start to moo pretty early and let us know that he wanted food, so... Well, now he's outside.
He's happy.
So good news, the Kuhn rake is done. It's all put back together and it seems like it's gonna work great. I filmed the repair of it in time lapse so that you could see all the steps, but so that didn't take 4 videos to complete, because honestly it ended up taking quite a bit more work and time than I expected, and a lot of the work I did was just in short little stages. Just with everything going on this spring, I didn't have days to set aside to work on it. So for the rest of this video, enjoy the time lapse and I will narrate what each step was and how it went along the way.
I set up a spray booth in our climate-controlled basement, which is heated to about 65 degrees, just using some drop cloths and staples and tape. Nothing special, but it did work, and I was able to suspend all the parts from some framing in the garage. I then set out to degrease everything, which is a pretty tedious process. I use a commercial degreaser, hot water, denatured alcohol, and compressed air. There's a lot of grease that was just dried and caked onto these parts over many years of service, so it took a while to get that off. And then I gave everything a thorough wire brushing with the angle grinders and various wire brush wheels. I elected not to do a primer and instead to leave the original paint after it had been wire brushed and just do a top coat over it.
seemed like the original paint was still bound to the parts pretty well. We sourced this paint locally from Napa. I took the rotor, the lower rotor that I had to buy new from Kuhn in. They were able to scan it and came up with this code and color matched the paint. And really, it came out quite close. It was perhaps a little more orange and less red than the Kuhn paint. But in general, I was really pleased with the color match. And it sprayed well, and it seems to have put a durable coating on the rake. Hopefully that holds up to the sun well as the years go by. I applied the paint just using your standard HVLP Harbor Freight spray gun, and I had two of them. I actually ended up using the one that has the smallest reservoir. I felt like as a beginner painter who doesn't have a lot of experience doing this, it helped me pace myself and not over apply the paint. The paint was still pretty expensive. It was cheaper to do it this way than with spray cans, but it was still a few $100s for the paint. So I wanted to make sure that I didn't necessarily have to go back and buy more. This took several hours of work. I did it late at night when I could just have a little bit of time to myself to get everything set up. But the end result was good, and the drop cloth spray booth worked out really well for us. With the paint curing, I turned my attention to replacing the bearings. I ended up getting new NSK bearings all around. I tried to source them locally, but nobody had the sizes I needed. So I ended up just getting them online. But NSK is a really good bearing, and I have no doubt they'll provide many years of dependable service. I also replaced the bushings in the bottom of the tandem wheel arms. They had these copper, I believe they're copper, but the self-lubricating bushings, and they were completely worn out. So I ended up driving the old ones out and replacing those. They were $36 a piece, so kind of an expensive add-on there, but really necessary because the old ones were pretty worn. But the wheels are a really important part of a rake, especially with rough fields like we have up here. So it was worth taking the extra time to make sure that was done right. This is the main mast that goes on. It took me a couple minutes to figure out how everything had come apart. I probably should have taken better pictures before I disassembled it. Here are the new rotors with brand new bearings, nicely painted, and the new ring gear, which is the source of the problem here. So these are upside down from how they would be mounted on the rake mast. And then this cap with the drive gear would sit on top of all of that. But everything was looking really good. I was feeling good about how the bearings fit together, and everything seemed really smooth and tight. I was very happy about that. I really perseverated a long time about this central cam and making sure that I had it oriented correctly. Here's a video of how this cam works because it's pretty cool. Hey everyone, I'm Seth at Boost Run Farm. This is the Kuhn GA3200 GT we're rebuilding. And if you're like me, you've driven in front of one of these things for many hours and looked back and wondered how exactly it worked and never known, at least I didn't. So while it was apart, I took the time to leave the top rotor off and put these two arms on opposite sides and two teeth on so we can watch it work. You'll see this cam is really the secret to it. I always thought these cam wheels trailed the arms, but they actually lead them. And as the rotor turns around, the cam wheels go up and down in the cam track here, and it makes the tines of the rakes raise and lower perfectly. So I'm going to turn it, and then I'll bring you in closer so you can see it in more detail. They never crash, they never miss. Perfectly synchronous. Your camera there is positioned at the back of the rake. This is actually the front of the rake where the crop would be. Pretty cool, right? So with all the new bearings in and the main drive system reassembled, it was time to reconnect it to the frame of the rake. So using some heavy duty sawhorses and some blocking and just a hydraulic bottle jack, I was able to line everything up
and get it to slide together, including the shaft inside, which obviously has to mate up with a hole in the correct orientation so that a roll pin could be driven in to connect the two. At this point, I was feeling pretty happy and like I pretty much had this project by the horns, and it didn't seem like any major roadblocks were going to be in the way. And then I realized that I had assembled the rake inside the garage and that it did not fit out the garage doors, which certainly was not my brightest moment, but thankfully, with the help of my border collie here, she helped me figure out how to just tilt the rake at an angle and then slide it out sideways so that it was past, the widest part was past the door, and I was able to just push it outside from there. Well, definitely not one of my prouder moments, but it is outside and the door is still intact, mostly. I didn't cut the house apart to get it out. All back together. Shaft is connected in here. You can hear those new gears meshing pretty good. Got some nice grease in there. I had to play around with the shims some. I mean, I didn't have a spec manual, so I just kind of went with what seemed reasonable to me. But I think I got it good. I mean, they're meshing nice and tight, but they're not, there's no resistance. So I think they're in a good place. So the next step was to reattach all the rake arms, which was kind of fun, not very hard to do, but the cam wheel has to fit into the cam track, so you had to make sure that you lined it up correctly, each one, as you went along. And you could test them by just turning the whole rotor and watching them go up and down. Unfortunately, it wasn't until I had finished putting all the rake arms on that I realized that the dust covers or guards needed to fit in between each arm. So I had to take one bolt out of each and bend it out of the way and put that dust guard in. But that wasn't hard to do either. Next, the rake tines themselves all went on, and this was pretty easy and fun. Initially, I was going to get new hardware for them, but I was over budget at this point with the project, so I held off on that and I reused most of the old hardware. I just put never sees on each bolt so that they worked a little easier than when I took them off. I bought 3 new tines, 2 needed to be replaced, there was only 1 tooth, and then that gave me 1 extra spare to save for if something goes wrong while we're haying. So that night it rained pretty hard, and then the next day was nice and sunny and dry with a light breeze. Perfect day to put the decals on, and the rain washed any dust off the frame, so that was kind of nice. It took me a while to figure out how to line these stickers up, and I'm still not sure that I did a really great job. I used the base of the rake as a straight edge because that is the least tapered aspect of the rake frame. And now the only thing left to do is put the PTO shaft back on, give it a thorough greasing through all the new joints and bearings, and then spin this thing up and see how it works. I'm really happy with how the rake turned out, and I'm very thankful for this opportunity to take one apart completely, see how they work. I feel like I learned a lot in this process. There's a couple things that didn't turn out quite like I hoped. I was really hoping to replace the side curtain, which is pretty beat up. But for this year, we had budgeted a certain amount for a rake, and we're just over that now, so the side curtain will have the weight. Even though this is an older model Kuhn rake, I'm really thankful to have it. I'm very excited to have a rotary style rake for haying this year, and I think it's going to be a great fit for our small farm operation. So now it's time to tow it back and stow it away until we get the first cutting hay in a couple weeks here. I'm really thankful for all that I learned in this process, and I'm thankful that you were able to come along with us and watch these videos, and hopefully you picked up something along the way as well that might help you with another project, or at least help your legs not to get caught in a rake.